and welcome at our first event in the UXify series of Team of One. We're here at Sendcloud in Eindhoven, and I want to give the audience a warm welcome here, but also online. We're very happy that you're there. My name is Jolijn van Sleeuwen, and together with Ola, who is here in Eindhoven, and Sarah, who is joining online, we organize every month an event on Meetup. We bring together UX professionals, UX starters, UX students of different levels, starters, professionals, seniors, experts, and we bring up UX themes every month. Today we're at Sendcloud in Eindhoven, and Caroline Overgoor is our host of today. She contacted us a few months ago with the question of we can organize an event together, and we bonded, we shared our strengths, and today we are here. UX and Sendcloud will dive into how Sendcloud grow their UX team, and they will share some inside information of 5 different topics. But I guess Caroline will share more about that. So, the floor is yours.
I will need this because I will change the slides. Yeah, so thank you, Jolijn, for the nice introduction, and also a big warm welcome to all of you. As a start, I'm actually very curious on who you are. So yeah, therefore we have 2 polls for the online audience, and I will ask to you as well, just in real life, since we can. Job, can you maybe open the first poll? So the first poll is actually, I'm curious to know, can you please raise your hands if you are from Eindhoven? Wow. Can you raise your hands if you're not from Eindhoven? Also a few people. Nice. Job, do you have any responses already from the poll?
Waiting for it.
Yeah?
Okay, let's end the poll. What we see in the results is that half of the people is from the Netherlands, 1 person from Eindhoven, who is not joining here. Interesting. 1 person from Europe and 2 people outside Europe.
Wow, nice. So we even have an international audience today. Nice. The second question I actually have is also via a poll, so you can already launch it if you like, Job. Is because the theme of this series of UXify events is the Team of One. And I am very curious also to know what kind of team are you in. So can you please raise your hands if you are a solo designer? 3, 4, 5, semi-solo, half, 2, no. Raise your hands if you're a team bigger than 5. Yeah? Cool. More than 20? More than 100? No? Kidding. Job, do you have any insights from the digital audience?
Yeah, it's quite similar to what we see here. So no teams above 20, 40% of them are solo, and the rest is quite evenly distributed over the rest of the teams.
Nice, cool. Because today we are going to share some insights that may be super useful also for a solo designer, but are also very useful for if you are growing your team. Let's start at the beginning. So what is Sendcloud? So Sendcloud is actually founded in 2012, so almost 10 years ago. And we creating software, a platform to help merchants ship packages. So you can imagine that during the corona we grow a bit, quite a bit. Yeah, that brought challenges also for us as a design team, as a development team, and we will highlight some of them today. Besides our merchants that are actively using the software that we create, we also have consumers, and they are all over the world. So they are receiving the tracking pages, they are looking at the checkout. So the whole shipping experience is something that is owned by Sendcloud. We also received some awards that I am extremely proud of, so that's why I want to share it as well. And we hope also that, that you maybe want to change your process later on after you saw these talks. Just a small recap on what we are going to do today. So this is like a traditional design process. So we start with emphasize, then go into the define, ideate, prototype, test, implement. And what is especially important at Sendcloud is also the post-implementation. So we are constantly improving our software. And therefore I selected the speakers of today. So we have Andrea as a first speaker. He will talk about the feedback repository, so mainly focus on doing continuous research with little or with a lot of resources. Then we have Camilla, who will dive into the design system, the use of it, and why you will use it. Then we have Rob. He is our first in line that is not actually a UX designer, that will give some insights on the design process, development process. And his chat will be regarding conventional comments. Then we have Nicole. Nicole's a product lead, so also not a designer. And she will talk about release strategies, and I will end with giving some insights on the beta community. Why did we invite also non-UX designers? Because we believe that especially a team of small, but also growing a team, collaboration is key. Yeah, that's how I want to end it. So more regarding the structure, we have lightning talks. What does it mean, lightning talks? There are 5 to 7 minutes, and we dive into a topic very quickly, and we provide a lot of information. After the talk, we will have 1 or 2 questions in between, but we also have, in the end, plenty of time to do a Q&A. I would like to hand over the mic to Andrea. Thank you.
Hi, online people. I'm Andrea, and I'm going to talk about feedback, closing the feedback loop. And I'm one of the UX designers at Sendcloud, and I live in Eindhoven, but as you can hear from my accent, I'm definitely not Dutch. I was born and raised in Naples, in the south of Italy, and I'm someone who really loves to research, and it's my favorite part in the design process. And as it weird as it may sound, I also really love to study. That's why today I'm going to talk about how to perform continuous research, and in particular about feedback. So imagine if at the start of every new project you had to forget everything that you know about customers within the domain. So rather than building on existing information, you had to start from scratch every single time. That would be crazy. Yet so many teams and people work this way, and I used to work this way at the beginning of my career. So too often looking for existing information might feel like hunting for fossils. And in Sendcloud, to ensure that what we already know do not remain buried underground, we built a feedback repository, so to better store, share, and use this information. How we did it? We firstly create a feedback channel on Slack, so everyone in the company can, by using a simple template, can write feedback, can write about the customer's feedback. Of course, we check the NPS, super important, so the Net Promoter Score, so how likely our customers will recommend us to others. Documentation, as boring as it might be, it's super useful to write documentation about what we work on, user feedback, usability testing, customer visit, and then we use an external tool, NGHQ, which is the place where we store all this information, and of course, as always, is accessible to everyone in the company. This is an example of the template that we have on Slack. So we have the user ID, the plan which the user is on, and of course the feedback itself, and a screenshot from one of the pages of NGHQ where we store some of our documentation. So by establishing a user feedback repository, you will be able not only to give a home to this poor feedback, but to systematically build important and high-level features. And to conclude my lightning talk, when building something like this, you should try to do it in a way that is accessible to everyone for the product team or the whole company. It should be stored everything in one single place. And of course, it's never too late to start, despite the size of your team. And that's it.
Thank you so much. It was great. Job, I have a question for you. Is there any question from the online audience?
Sorry, I was just saying that if people have questions, they can ask it in the chat. So
Perfect.
Waiting for it.
Nice. Do we have any questions from the audience over here? No? If something pops up, we have, after all the talks, we have more time. Also, Andrea will be there. So, yeah, then I would like to introduce you to the next host. It's Camilla.
Hi everyone, I'm Camila, and today I will talk about design systems and when and how to start. So I'm also a UX designer here in Sendcloud, and I joined a year and a half ago. And back then we were only 3 people, and now we're a big team and hosting UXify event. So that was a crazy ride. Before that, I was studying my bachelor in creative media and game technologies with a focus on UX. So I was super happy to have my first job in a company with so much focus on UX, user and their experiences. So what is a design system? Probably most of you are already quite familiar with the concept, but fundamentally a design system is a single source of truth guided by standards and shared vision that allows different teams to create one consistent product. And I want to answer 2 questions today: when to start and how to start, by sharing the story of how we are building our design system, Sendcloud Cosmos. So, when to start the design system? The answer is pretty simple: when it just gets too painful of not having one. And how to recognize these pains? You will feel them, or maybe already feeling them. And these are examples of our pains. First of all, we were keep recreating the same components, and then developers would have to keep re-implementing them. So that would just create a pile of double and triple work. Then the fact that we are decentralized as a UX team, and we work in separate product teams. And when we deliver inconsistent designs, it leads to the different parts of the platform have different look and feel, and that kind of ruins the user experience. Then we start to notice that it was harder and harder to provide quality reviews, because there was no solid foundation to base arguments when we review each other's designs. Then when we actually had reusable components and UI library, the assembled result wasn't consistent because we didn't have enough guidelines on how to actually use these components. So to shock you even more, these are some numbers that we did after the audit together with front-enders. So we found out that we had 7 different variations of a drop-down on our platform, more than 100 different colors, and more than 1,000 different spacings for paddings and margins. And this kind of inconsistencies can really damage the user experience. So, okay, you know your pains, and then you recognize them. What to do next? This is our story. First of all, start the conversation with your teammates, people from other teams, and just people who face these kind of problems in their everyday tasks. And build a team. Build an enthusiastic team of people who are willing to address these kind of problems by creating a design system together. Then what we had a nice workshop together to name the villain. So to really define the problem, what it can be. Is it inefficiency in the design process? Is it inconsistency in deliverables? Is it miscommunication between designers and front-enders? So you really need to know what are exactly your problems, because then when you create a roadmap, you will know what kind of problems to solve first. Then it's very important to define a clear strategy. So who will be the people involved in the design system, how the design and implementation process will go, how UXers will collaborate with front-enders together, because this is very important. And then create awareness. Design system is a project that will affect a lot of designers and developers. So the whole development department should be aware that you're working on something like this. And one fun thing that we do, we have Cosmos Days, is when the whole design system team gathers, and we work together on design system related tasks, and then by the end of the day we have a call with the whole department, and we update them on our achievements and updates, and how it's going, to make sure that everyone is aligned. So this is an example of our approach. First of all, we work on the foundations. So what are our colors, what are our typography, our spacings, to really set solid foundations to later create components. Because when we were redefining our components, we were using the guidelines that we did from the foundation. Right now we're working on patterns, so it's combinations of different components together. And we're using the guidelines that we made while making the components. So we're really building up the consistency to make sure that everything is coherent in between each other. Later on, we will be working on layouts and interaction models to make sure not only the visual part is consistent, but also the whole experience and flows interaction between the pages. What are the main benefits that we already feel from having a design system? First of all, even though we work in separate teams, we deliver a consistent experience to the users throughout different features and different products. Then the communication between designers and developers improved tremendously, especially when it comes to things like handoffs processes. It really speeded up also the design and development process, and it really now gives us the time to focus on more important things rather than fighting over the color of the button. So the main takeaways is choose the right moment when to start a design system, so when it will really benefit you and not be just a blocker. Then don't do it just because Shopify has it. Really define goals and planning according to very specific needs of your team. Design systems are a really big project and will take time and effort and capacity, but it's definitely something very exciting and fulfilling to work on. Yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, thank you, Camilla. I'm curious, do we have any questions so far from the audience? Yeah, we have. Job, can you give the mic?
All right. Hi, my name is Jeroen. Camilla, wonderful presentation. Thank you. I have a question, because you say you have to set out goals before you actually start designing the system. So I'm wondering, in the process, you also have to take into account the implementation of the design process, the design system, right? So do you have an example of how you do that?
Yes, actually something that we've been working in the past weeks on, to define a really clear workflow of the designers and the developers. So how we do it now, we have so a designer, for example, right now we're focused on the components. So designer picks up a component, they create a proposal, they do the audit, how the component looks now, and then the provides a solution, and then we have this constant feedback loop together with developers. They look at our proposal and say how difficult would be that to implement, and then when we agree on solution, we finalize the proposal, we document it, we update all the design-related things like in Figma components, and then we, in the Zero High, this is the tool where we keep our documentation, and then we do the handoff to the developers, and then they implement it in the UI library. And make sure that everywhere, also in the platform, it's the updated components.
I can understand that sometimes it's quite a big process. Like have this iterative development process, and everywhere in the application, the components need to be updated. So yeah, sounds quite challenging. Right, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a question from the chat, actually.
Nice.
So we will ask it. It's a question from Sarah, and she's asking, if you're a team of one, will it be the right moment to create a design system?
Oh yes, that would be definitely more challenging for just one person, but I would say it's the same when it really feels painful to not have one, and of course it would be hard to make full-blown design system, but you can start with creating a pattern or UI library.
Nice, thank you.
She does have more questions.
Maybe we can leave the other questions for the end.
Yeah, the rest is for after this. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Camilla.
Thanks everyone.
I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker, Rob.
I'm excited. Looking forward to it. So as you can see, I am going to present something about conventional commons. So as Caroline already mentioned, my name is Rob. And I am a front-end developer, so not a UXer. So I know some things about UX, of course, but that's not my core business. I do live in Eindhoven. I'm also a Dutchie. There are some Dutchies here in the company as well. And besides working here, I really love climbing, but also building physical things. So not only the features that we build here, but I also just bought a new house, and I'm going to start renovating it in 2 weeks from now. And besides that, I have over 15 years of experience of reviewing both code, but also designs. So about a year ago, we started using conventional commons within the front-end chapter. And recently, it's also been adopted within UX. But before I'm actually going to dive into what conventional comments are, I would like actually to share this problem that we actually try to tackle with conventional comments. So what is it? Well, everyone, I think, has been more and more working from home due to Corona the last 1.5 years. And so what you normally could do before is just go over and provide a piece of feedback to someone. And it would not be, I mean, it would be in a verbal and non-verbal communicative way. So you can share way more information than when you type something. I think that's the whole problem here, is that when you type a message on a design or in a merge request or just on Slack, it's lacking a lot of information. And I think that's the thing that we try to prevent with conventional comments as well. But then also what you see quite often is that the intent of written feedback, it's very easy to misinterpret what someone actually meant with the message. And also quite often it's lacking the importance of how important it is to actually pick something up before moving forward with the next design. Small example that you can see here in the bottom is that this is not worded correctly. Okay, what is not worded correctly? How important is it to fix that thing before moving forward? It even comes across a bit aggressive. If you just get this piece of feedback, it's not worded correctly. So I think this is all a nice example of where the difficulties are. So then, talking about the solution, and I think conventional comments are the solution for this. So what are conventional comments? It's basically a standard for formatting comments. So it basically defines what you need to put in your comment in order to be, well, descriptive enough to understand it as a person that receives that feedback. So what I already mentioned, it can be used in any kind of reviewing process, so not only for code, but also for designs. The standard contains out of some mandatory and some optional pillars. So the mandatory ones are the label and the subject, while the optional ones are the decoration and the discussion. I'll dive a bit more into that and how to use it, but since I think you're all visual people in general, I would like to show some examples of this. So as I already shared, the bad example is this is not worded correctly. What you could do by using conventional comments is just add a small label just in front of it saying suggestion, this is not worded correctly. Still not super clear, but it at least is giving a bit more context, and also the tone of voice is becoming a bit clearer, so it's not so pushy anymore. An alternative to a suggestion would be a nitpick, and then using a decorator saying non-blocking. So you also know that you can even move forward without resolving this piece of feedback. A nitpick is normally like a small, trivial thing, but that is normally blocking. But in this case, you're clearly stating that it's not blocking. So that's saying something about the importance of it. Then I think what would be better, or even best in this situation, is to start with a suggestion, then saying this is not worded correctly, but then also add a bit of reasoning behind it. So why do you feel that it's not worded correctly? I think that's added as a discussion. So can we change this to match the wording of the marketing page? That is already giving way more information and prevents ping-ponging between reviewer and reviewee. So the standard. I already highlighted some of the terms that are being used in this standard. So we have a label, which is mandatory. We have a subject that is also mandatory. And then we have a decoration and a discussion, which are optional. So the label, I'll go back, or I'll go a bit more in depth in the next slide. But it's predefined list. The decoration, it's kind of open to use any terms that you would like to use. But quite common terms are blocking, non-blocking. You can use if minor, UX. You can even add multiple as long as you comma separate them. That's part of the standard as well. I would always stick to a maximum of 2, since otherwise it becomes more confusing even. Then the subject, of course, mandatory, since, I mean, that's actually what contains the real message. And then the discussion to give a bit more insights. I think here in the bottom you can also see how that's actually being used in practice. So you have a suggestion, non-blocking, the subject, and the discussion at the bottom. Then to dive a little bit more into these labels, so this part of the standard, we have different label types. And this is a predefined list, so it's also mandatory to stick to that list. But they all have their own reasons to use them. So for example, a praise. So you start your piece of feedback with praise, semicolon. It's something to highlight that you saw something very positive in a design or in a feature. If you want to use a nitpick, that's mainly for small and trivial, but mandatory changes. A suggestion, if you want to propose a new, like an improvement on the design. An issue you can use when highlighting a specific problem. And an issue is actually very good to pair it up with a suggestion. So you can say like, this is actually broken, but you can fix it using this. Then if something is not certain or is not clear to you or the importance is not clear, then you can add a question. If you have an ID that just popped up in your mind while reading your review, then you can add a thought. A review or a thought, sorry, is normally non-blocking. And then last but not least, you have a chore. It's not used that often, but if you have a simple task that really needs to be done before providing approval to the review, then you can address it in this way. It's normally more related to processes. Then, what are the main benefits of using this? Well, I think it really helps to provide clear and actionable feedback. And that actionable is also very important, since otherwise you keep this ping-ponging if things become unclear. Then it also limits the chance of misinterpretation by the receiver. And in the end, it will result in shorter lead times in the whole process of reviewing something. Then we have some additional benefits for Sendcloud. Since we started using this in multiple disciplines, it became actually easier for us to understand what to expect from a review. And people started to collaborate easier, cross-discipline, but also cross-teams. And then the main takeaways of this presentation. So conventional comments, it's a standard to provide clear feedback. It adds intent and importance to the message, and it results in shorter lead times in the whole reviewing process. That was it. Thanks for listening to my story.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. You're welcome. I'm curious, are there any questions from the audience? Yeah, we have a question. Job, can you maybe...
Who has the most difficult question?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Hi, my name is Daria. I'm a UX designer in Eindhoven. Really great presentation. Thank you. I think most of us can relate to this feedback issue. How long did it take for Sendcloud to actually adopt this? Because it's a really great strategy, I think. How quickly did you start seeing the results?
Yeah, I think in front end it was relatively easy. Since if you have a merge request, which is normally like something with code, there are some plugins that you can use in GitLab that actually automatically provide this format and just kind of pre-populates it for you, so you know that you are sticking to that standard. But I think the whole thing is that as people start using it and you see it more often, it becomes more easy for you to also start applying that format as well. So yeah.
Like a habit.
Yeah, it becomes a habit, and you really start thinking eventually in this format. It's sometimes a bit weird. Even in conversations, you would almost think like, oh, should I start my question with question? But yeah.
Yeah, on GitLab it will be easier, but on Figma, you guys use Figma. Did you see that as well being used on Figma?
Yeah, maybe I can respond to it. So yeah, it is also becoming more and more a habit. but also because we have like a decentralized design team, as in we have multiple Scrum teams, and in every Scrum team there's a designer. So we do not only require reviews from our fellow designers, but also from front end. And I think that was the main part why it becomes so easy to just follow the same way of reviewing. Yeah, and in Figma it actually works fine. If you just use a comment, put a suggestion there, and then resolve it when you fixed it. So yeah.
Cool, thanks. Nice.
Nice.
Maybe I can go quickly after. I was wondering, how do you expect an answer? Is it also in the same format, or how does that go?
Yeah, most often that's actually not the case, though I think it could perfectly happen.
Yeah.
I think as long as you think in this format and you feel the need to also do that while replying, then it's only a win, I would say. But if you don't really feel the need, if it's just a response to a question that someone had and you just responded, I think that's valid enough. But yeah, you can definitely use it.
Yeah, because some of the labels also require action, right? So issue, like who's taking care of the issue? Is it the one who gives the feedback or the one that receives the feedback?
Yeah.
But I imagine you figured out some strategies there.
Yeah, I mean, it's in general, I think every conversation is kind of fluent and it's in real life, and I think it's also in this way of working, but yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you, Rob, as well. Maybe another round of applause. Yes, thank you. Cool. Well, then I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, which is Nicole.
Thank you. I'm Nicole, and I'll be talking a little bit more about release strategies here at Sendcloud. So as I said, Nicole, I'm the product lead, one of the product leads at Sendcloud, meaning that for the one of the domains we split up the product in multiple domains. I think on a daily basis about the vision, the roadmap, and the strategy of where we want to head into with our platform. I'm working mostly in the efficiency or at the efficiency domain with the analytics team and the processing team. So very much what's happening in the warehouses. How do you process orders as efficient as possible, and how can we use all of our data, and how can we actually give that to our customers? I live here in Eindhoven. I actually moved this weekend. Very exciting. I love playing volleyball and beach volleyball in summer. And I've been working at Sendcloud for 3.5 years now, and been in product management for 7.5 years in total now. So let's just dive right in. The problem statement of today is how do you seamlessly release software in a B2B environment? You can imagine that in the 3.5 years I've been at Sendcloud, I've experienced quite a lot of releases. We release, I think, 15, 30, maybe even more times a day. So we release quite a lot. We release our software continuously. So it's also very important to think about how do you actually release your software to customers. To add some complexity to this problem, we are part of the shipping flow of the customer. What does that mean? Well, we are, as Caroline already described, we provide our customers with a shipping platform. So when you order a product at a web shop, that product eventually needs to end up in your house. And to process those orders, our customers rely on our platform. This means that breaking changes in that flow will directly impact our users' business, and it will also directly impact the relationship with our customers, meaning that they really trust us. We would like to continue that trust with them, so it's important to think about how to properly release. And that's why we aim for very stable, high-quality products, and releasing the release strategy is part of that. So the solution, it's this. So basically, we, by trial and error, to be honest, I'll go into that more detail, we came up with this release strategy. So basically 7 steps, while the 7th one is a bit entangled throughout the entire process. So to highlight, go through them a little bit. I'll highlight some of the steps a bit more later. We first start with an internal release. For those of you in the office here today, there's actually an internal release going on right now, right behind me. There is a computer set up, which is the internal release of a new warehouse automation solution we're currently testing. So we just released it internally. And then we ask all of the Sendcloud colleagues, please provide some feedback. Once that's going well, we release to beta. We've got a very big beta community. Caroline will explain you more about that later. We ask the same thing, how do you like it? What do you like? What do you dislike? What can we improve? And then to again improve on that. So that's also where that iterate step comes from. I think everybody in this room and online knows about that. After that, we release to all users, meaning that we just get it out in the open. Some more about that later. After that, we release it as a default to new users. They don't know the old version, so it doesn't really make sense to then provide them with both versions. Then we release it as a default for all of our users, so they can just still switch back to the old version if they really don't like the new version. And at the end, when we're done, and we're very confident that what we built is actually the right thing, it aligns with our customers, then we sunset the old version, which means basically removing the code, removing the entire thing, and then we're done. Again, each of those steps, we define what is needed to move on to the next step, and we keep on iterating. So to highlight some of the things, I just went through the internal release a little. Can be just a link to something, can be a real life version of what we're building here. We ask, we release it internally, and usually we send out a survey to our colleagues. Why do we do this? It's mostly because we want to gather more in-depth insights. We have a QA, so a quality insurance policy within our software development process, but with internal testing we often find some more bugs that we didn't notice yet. We get some other feedback. You can imagine, and I think you can all agree on this, when you're working on something, you're constantly in there, you can stare yourself blind at something, and it's nice if somebody else can look into it. When we release to all users, it's pretty much the same. We are by then quite confident that we resolved all of the bugs, not maybe all of them, but most of them, and we gather more qualitative data. So when people enter that new version, we usually prompt them with a survey asking them, hey, do you like the new version? What do you like? Did you manage to fulfill your, complete your task, for example, just to see if what we built is actually meeting the criteria that we've written down at the start. Making it default, that's also the first 4 steps are more qualitative in the way that we then rely a lot on the feedback of the users. But once you have more and more users on the system, as Caroline explained, we've got quite a big user base, you can also start gathering more quantitative data. We've got a lot of systems. We use Mixpanel, for example, and then you can start to see how customers are using your product. What we, for example, a real-life example, we are in the middle of the process right now with one of our features. We also keep track of who's opting in and who's opting out again. If you opt out, we also ask you, why did you opt out? Why weren't you satisfied? Just to gather more and more data so we can, again, iterate over what we've been building. There's of course always a difference in how you release. The release strategy I just explained was really specific to substituting our products. Caroline already said it, we were founded in 2012, so we already have a very big platform. That means that some of the things we've built 10 years ago are not very up to date or on par with our standards that we have today. So we are substituting them. Substituting is always a bit different than adding a new product. So if you add a new product, obviously you don't need to sunset the old one. You don't need to make things default for new users. So that can actually be a little bit easier. So this process I just explained was really on substituting something that was already there in your product. So just an example, this is usually how we release things. You enter our platform, you click on one of our features, and then sometimes you get prompted with this as a user. Well, it says, welcome to this great example, please try it out. You can then switch to the new one, see that in real life, start using it. If you really don't like it, you can always switch back. Why do you use this? As I just explained, we are part of some of the really business critical processes of our customers' workflow. If you want to get in-depth feedback of customers, you have to make sure that they have time for that. If you just throw a new version in their faces, they might think like, I really don't have the time for this, just switching back, and then they might forget about it and you don't get feedback. So we really try to make sure that we motivate users to use a new version, but we don't enforce it to them. Some of the impact then, the really game creators that we saw when using this release strategy is the ability to test new features. As I said, when we release internally, for example, sometimes we notice some bugs that we haven't uncovered yet. It's a really nice way to get feedback from the user because they're really experiencing it and not just testing it out while you're next to them, for example. So really real-life feedback. Yeah, ability to collect the user feedback. Some of the pain relievers, it helps to release predictable, stable, high-quality software. As I said, the user knows what to expect. He knows that a new version is coming. It's not that sometimes that on Monday he logs into the system and everything is blue, and on Tuesday suddenly everything is yellow and the buttons are all over the place. He knows that a new version is coming up. You give him time to adapt to that. And it helps you, of course, to ship new features with confidence. You know you really proved what you're building really meets the criteria of the user, and it is a better version of what you had to before. To wrap it up, the main takeaways of the release strategy. The release strategy really impacts the user experience. It's not just a feature that you're building. You can do a lot of research beforehand, but if you release it in an incorrect way, it also impacts the user experience in a bad way. So really think about this up front and really make this part of your of the entire design and software development process. As I said, provide flexibility to the user to decide when he feels confident enough and comfortable enough to try out a new feature. And over communication is key. Usually that button that I just showed you for trying out a new version, it stays there for quite a long time, and we just keep on asking you, hey, you want to try it out? Want to try it out? Maybe you want to try it out. So just over communicate and be very clear on what's new, and give some guidance. We use app queues, for example, give some guidance on what has changed and communicate that in a very clear way to the user. That's it.
Nice, thank you, Nicole. Job, I'm looking at you. Do you have some questions from the...
We don't have questions from the chat. Did you have a question?
Yeah. That's also possible, of course.
Yeah, so my question is, how do you filter feedbacks from your beta community?
How do I filter feedback from the beta community? Good question. So usually when we release something to beta, we have it connected to our feedback system as well. So we have a flow in the system where we can add beta users, and then they have access to that feature. They already know upfront. As I said, over communication is important, and we provide them also once we release it. We provide them with a way to communicate their feedback back to us. So that's pretty aligned. And then to make sure that we, as I said, we know when to move on to the next step. We also define at that point like what is really the blocking feedback and what is the non-blocking feedback. So within that loop, we make sure that users know what to test, and how to provide us with the proper feedback.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, then I will introduce you to the last speaker, which is myself. That's a bit awkward. Yeah, I will give give you some insights in how to connect actually with your users. So I really liked within the other talks that the user is coming back every time. And our product development process needs to have user feedback every time. But how are we actually doing that? That I will tell you. But first, I'm Caroline. You saw me now already this evening quite a few times. But I'm a UX lead at Sendcloud. I have the great challenge to build the first UX team. I live in the capital of Brabant. I was actually the judge also for the lekkerste Brabantse worstenbroodjes, which means that I ate 50 worstenbroodjes at one single day. And during the weekend, I'm a field hockey player, and I really enjoy team sports, and I also enjoy team sport at work. So not only within designers, within developers, but also with our users. But then we had a problem, like how can we involve our users into our development process? Our users, they, as Nicole said, they want to ship. They get tons of orders, they just want to ship packages and they are not waiting for us. Like, hi, can you provide feedback? So that was the first challenge that we have. Secondly, Sendcloud is located within Europe. Within Europe, we have multiple languages. Not everybody is very comfortable in talking English. I'm looking at a French colleague that we have. She always helps out, so that's really nice. We also have users that have different challenges. So what does it mean? We have some users that are selling very specialized products, such as plans. They have a way different process than when you ship covers for phones. I'm just saying something. It can also be the case that you have like 15,000 products or just 3 products. So those challenges, is something that we are facing as well. And we have a very enthusiastic development team who's ready to implement right away. They are not waiting for us to do feedback. Also, when you are a smaller team, the easiest thing that you can skip, some may say, is research. So here I have a solution that is very useful for a small team, but also for a big team, and that is start a beta community. So what does it mean? Also within the speech of Nicole, she has one puzzle piece that was beta. We use external tooling. We use a tool called Mighty Networks, and we invite there our users. So it is completely disattached from our panel itself. What we actually want is to have a low threshold to open the dialogue. So when we have questions for our users, but also the other way around. If users are facing an issue, we want them to feel comfortable to just place a comment on our community. I put in there gather qualitative data because sometimes you need to take it with a grain of salt. If we have a user that says, I want to have the panel in pink, then we need to think about if this is very useful for this user only, or is it useful for the whole user base that we have. Also make sure that you include all departments. I was looking at Celine earlier already, but really collaborating with different departments really help also building the community. We have departments that are talking with our customers every single day, and they are more than happy to invite them to the beta community. It saves us time. We can ask them questions, so it's a win-win situation. Focus on the long-term relationship with your customer. And also users can connect with peers. So we actually had one customer, before we had a beta community, we had a beta user group. And he was constantly asking, I want to understand how other people do this. And we as Sendcloud, we develop, of course, the software, but we are not using it on a day-to-day basis. So making sure that users can connect also benefits our user itself. We were a bit scared. Are our users actually looking forward to this, or is it just the idea that we have in mind that will work? So we asked them to join, and also on why they would join. You can look at some of the comments here. So help to improve the platform, but also want to make the platform even better. So you already see that people are already happy with the platform, but they want to even make it better. So then we started really small. That's maybe also good to know. We started with 30 people in total, and now within a few months we are with more than 300 people. So an example of a release that we actually did last week, which is multi-user accounts. This is just a screenshot from the beta community, also how we communicate. Nicole already said it, over-communicate. So we have multiple posts within the community regarding this release. And we are very transparent, so customers can also respond on that post, and they can respond on each other, and sometimes you also see a dialogue starting. So we had a customer, and we were working on a project for international shipment, and he said, I don't know how I get the data into the platform. And then there was another customer, he said, oh, I use it like this, here's a script, you can use it, problem solved, and we actually understood what we need to build next. Win-win. We also gather technical and user insights. Actually, what Nicole said, when we do beta release, we also have insights in how our databases or services respond to it. And there is room for iteration. So we make sure that after we gather the feedback from our beta community, that we will look at the quantitative and the qualitative data and make sure that we make changes if needed before moving to the next release phase. Another example is from our other UX designer, Colin. She is working on like the first part of the design process, so more the research part, which is related to analytics. And she was just asking a poll within a community, do you use this and how do you use it? So here you see that, I took the screenshot. There were already 7 responses and there were 2 likes already, so there is interactivity. People are able to respond, and again, it's a conversation starter. So why do we actually have a beta community? So now we have it, I think, since March, and I'm extremely proud of it. But we bring together our customers and Sendcloud to share, learn, and develop and grow together. We see that our customers are also want to grow. We also see that if a customer is using a web shop, they will grow instant when they add a marketplace to it, for example. And it made us that we can we can develop user-centered. So we get our user into the development process. We can work agile. We have easy access to our users, and not only the development team, but actually everybody at Sendcloud. And we actually can get answers to questions we didn't ask, we couldn't ask before because there wasn't like a platform for it. So my main takeaway is always connect to your user. They are, in the end, the people that use your software, so don't forget about them. Start small, think big. We started with 30 users, which is very, very small compared to the more than 20,000 users that we have. But we make sure that we have like a healthy balance between small and big and cross-country. And also create a user-centered mindset within a company. So as I said before, there are people talking with users every day, and when they invite them to the beta community, they have already like a feedback mindset. They know that we are actually taking this feedback very well within development. We take it seriously, so create a user-centered mindset within the company, and that was actually the end of my talk about the beta community. If we have a question now from the digital ones?
No, we don't have digital questions.
No? No. Somebody from the audience here? No? Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline, for this very nice insights on the beta community. Is it a page? Or are it pop-ups, or how is it integrated? Is it integrated in the platform? I'm curious how it has
good question.
Form.
So the beta community is completely separate from it. But what we do is that we have on a user level, we flag the user that it's part of the beta community, and therefore it allows us to release features to them, but also to create, what Nicole also said before, the pop-ups, to introduce them to like the new feature and to guide them to the different steps. So by tagging the user like in our backend, we can attach different tools to it, also regarding communication.
So the questions and the polls, it's a pop-up on the platform?
No, that's actually completely separate from it. So you can see it as some kind of Facebook, but then completely for Sendcloud beta community members.
Yeah, so the users can go to this page to see.
Yes, indeed. And when we post something, we can also decide, do we want to notify our user by email? Or not, we wanted to make sure that we are not constantly interfering with their workflow.
Thanks.
Cool.
Do you give any rewards to beta users, or they do it like on a voluntary basis?
Yeah, well, I get this question as well from users, like, what's in it for me? So it's not a strange question. Thank you for asking it. But what we see as a benefit is that they have access to features earlier than the other audience. And they have a voice in how we are going to develop further on it. We did provide them with a small welcome package, including socks. But I'm actually wearing them today, yes. But other than that, it's more the relationship that we're building with our users that they can see as a reward and what we see as a reward as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course, yeah.
I think also, adding to what Caroline just said, if you give a reward, maybe a free subscription or a discount on subscription, we notice that the feedback is less genuine and there is even less feedback. Because you already promised it before, because you cannot really track their activity, that becomes an issue. And instead, if they want to do it because they care, it makes it much easier to get responses.
Sorry. Thank you. No, very good one. Yeah. Having that said, thank you so much for listening. We now have some time for a Q&A. So what I did is just put the faces also here, so and the names and also the topics. So we went through the design process super quick, and we highlighted some of our processes. But I'm also curious, of course, to hear your feedback also from the online audience. I know that they are there or there. So yeah, if you have any questions, if you note something down, then yeah, feel free to do an openings question, maybe from the chat. Can we start with the chat? That might be a nice one.
Okay, this one is for Camilla. Okay, from Marcus, he said, you mentioned that you should start a design system when it becomes painful not to have one. If you could go back to the start of the Sendcloud journey, would you try to implement Cosmos from the very beginning, or wait until it became clear that it was needed?
Well, honestly, ideally, yes, it would be cool to have design system right away, but in reality, you have more important stuff in the beginning to work on rather than design system. You have actual features to build. So yeah, it depends. If you have a lot of time and capacity and people, yes, that would be cool to start it with right away, because it will solve problems already on the way. But yeah, it really depends on the team structure.
Okay. Marcus, if that answers your question, you can just let us know in the chat. And we have one for Nicole. How long does the entire release process usually take for you?
Good one. It depends a little. It looks like a very long and tedious process. However, for example, internal release can be as short as a few days, depending on the size of a feature. Usually we do try to, for example, the beta release, we do try to last that as a minimum of 2 sprints, also to give the user plenty of time to give us feedback. But depending on how much feedback you get in each step, you can really speed up this process. So there's not that I can now say this will take you 5 months, but it depends a bit on the size of the feature and the amount of feedback you get. But yeah, some of the steps can be speed up and be very fast. Some of the steps will take you a bit longer, but there's no real answer to how long this will take specifically. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The next one is for Caroline.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is from me. Yeah. So at what point did you realize that you needed a beta community, and how were you able to convince management to invest in this community?
Yeah, first the convincing part. I think that the key point that I learned there is that you need to start small. You can have big plans, but big plans are way harder to find implementation to. And when did we find a need? We find a need that when we were actually a little bit smaller as a team size, it takes a lot of time to recruit users for your usability tests, to gather insights, to go visit them. And we wanted to make that time actually smaller, but we did want to have the quality of doing user research. Yeah, so that was actually the main moment that we thought, okay, we want to perform user research and we wanted to do it in a smaller amount of time. And the first one was, yeah, recruiting of our user base. Yeah.
And how did you convince management to invest?
Yeah, to start small. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I think the next one is for Camila. Yeah. So what's the process of updating the design system in Sendcloud?
The process of updating, so yes, right now we have our Figma UI library for designers, and then we have
Sorry.
and then we have the front-end UI library. And the update goes that, yeah, designers create proposal, then front-enders review it, we have some feedback loop, and then we update it on our end in Figma library, and the front-enders update it on their UI library and the platform.
Okay, so does all designers contribute to the design system?
Yes.
Or do you have just one person doing it?
No, the whole team is involved.
The whole team?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And we have one for Andrea.
Oh.
Hello?
Yeah. So why did you choose Enjoy HQ above other softwares?
Because with Enjoy HQ, you are able to basically import everything you want. So both the feedback, you have an integration with Slack, so you can import stuff from Slack. You can write documentation, and you have the possibility of tagging single observation, single feedback, single things. You have the possibility to check the NPS score, and it's something that it's easy to understand, and it's again accessible to everyone, which is the most important thing. Because, yeah, again, the most important thing is that everyone in the company is aware of what is going on and what our users want.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think that's all for now.
Nice. Do we have any questions from our in-person audience?
Well, I do have a question for Rob.
Yeah? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, need to have a microphone.
Okay. I do have a question for you, but I think you sort of answered it before. But for the conventional comments, I know that it is based or inspired by conventional commits.
Yep.
But where was this development into comments something that came up in discussions to implement it, or was it something that, I don't know.
Yeah, I can elaborate, since I can imagine that not everyone knows what conventional commits are. So if you build a feature, then you write some code and you need to commit that to a code base. And that's where everyone then can see it, and from there we can deploy a feature to production. And conventional commits kind of defines if your commit, so the change that you're making, if it's like a small fix, if it's a fix, if it's a new feature, or if it's a breaking change even. So it's kind of defining the same structure. You start with fix or feed, then you have your decorations, and then you have your message. I think since developers know conventional commits, and we also use it in our whole code base, I think the step to moving towards conventional commons was relatively easy, since you already know that you sometimes have to communicate in a format. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question. Cool.
Thank you, Rob. Any other questions? No? Perfect. Well, then I would like to thank you all for listening in. I would also like to thank all the speakers for sharing their insights today. Also, a big warm applause for Jinte, who was helping me with the event. I'm not sure where she is. Oh, there she is. Thank you so much, Jinte. I think it was very nice, also the setup. If you were listening today and you were thinking, wow, this is an amazing company to work, we do have some openings, also for UX research and UX design. If you have any questions to that, then feel free to, and also for product and UI. we have a lot of openings. We also have two recruiters here that can also help you with some more in-depth questions. But other than that, thank you all. I really enjoyed it a lot. I'm also very happy that we could do this like both digitally and in person, because it's so nice to see also faces of other UX people here at Sendcloud. So, and lastly, I want to thank, of course, UXify for taking care of all the communication there. Yeah, thank you all. Have a great evening and hope to see you soon.
Recording stopped.